Hello, everyone. This is Rosalind Sedacca, and you're listening to Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living with Rosalind Sedacca on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. And as you know, I'm founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network, a divorce and co-parenting coach. And the focus of my work is in helping parents make the best decisions regarding their children before, during, and long after divorce. And I'm very excited to introduce you to our guest today. Her name is Martha Burich, and she was a college child psychology professor for 10 years, as well as a high school science teacher experienced in special education for 16 years. She's also the author of the book, Yes, You Can Raise Happy, Responsible Children. Who doesn't want to do that? So I'm very excited to have her talk to us about her expertise in families who are coping with divorce issues, because we want our children to remain happy despite the divorce, and we want to make responsible decisions for them and help them be responsible when they grow up as adults. So welcome, Martha.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here, Rosalind.
Oh, thank you. So let's start by my asking you this question about how can divorced parents manage the separate households and make the transitions easier for the children during the divorce and after the divorce?
Well, the number one thing I would say is do not ever speak negatively of your ex-spouse or their friends or anything else in front of the children. Just don't put the children in that situation, because if they hear you speak of someone else when they aren't around, the children then think, probably rightly, what are they thinking of me when I'm not around?
Yes.
And then they become also very fearful, because then they realize that there's a side, and whose side do they need to be on? Whereas there should be no side in a divorce. The only side is the welfare of the children and, of course, of the parents. But to have the best welfare of the parents, we need to remain positive, and we need to get our egos out of the way. This is such a delicate subject. You know, divorce is such a trying time for people, and you can really feel that it's hard. It's hard when things don't go the way that we want them to, and when there's a breakup, and especially when there's children involved, it's very difficult. And I really feel for everyone who's experiencing. And we are the grown-ups. We have to do the right thing, the grown-up thing, the mature thing, the responsible thing for the children, and to be a good example.
Martha, I love your message because you're speaking my message exactly, and it's so good for people to hear what you're saying. Basically, you're talking about parents forgetting to put themselves in their children's shoes and seeing the world through their eyes during this extremely challenging process. Once you do, it stops you in your tracks, and you can make better decisions, more mindful decisions. That's what
exactly
is to do.
And that really is our problem, as I think almost pretty much as human beings. We suffer from what's called the bondage of self. We only see things from our point of view. And it's very difficult for us to step into anyone else's shoes to see it from their point of view. That's such an excellent point, that we really need to put ourselves in our children's shoes. How difficult must it be to be living at someone else's house every few days or every couple of weeks? And everyone has different rules, and that's just life. You want to have a certain set of rules that everyone has, but that's just how it is. Things are different at grandma's house, at school, at church, at, wherever you go, Little League, the coach wants something different. So that's just life. But then again, we still need to see what's happening with our children. How much is expected of them? Who are they around? How are they handling that? Yes, it's a very difficult thing to step into someone else's shoes, isn't it?
Yes, and it's so important that parents are aware of this before they step in, so that they don't make the mistakes that we're talking about today. They can be avoided. And especially, I wanted you to address issues about maintaining a cordial relationship with your former spouse for the best interest of your children. Everyone talks about that, but it's not easy. We divorce for reasons, and usually it means there's differences, big gaps somewhere in the relationship with your ex, and yet you have these children together. How do we become cordial and respectful with someone who we may not like, we may not respect, and we may be angry at?
Well, that's an excellent question. First off, everyone has good and bad, and we have to make a decision what we're going to focus on. Too often we focus on the bad, and that's in our children too. We need to focus on the good, and also too often we focus on the bad in ourselves. So we need to focus on the good. You married that person for a reason, and you saw their good qualities. There's always that honeymoon period where all you see is the good. Go back to those days and remember, what did you see, and write it all down. And remember, each time you see that person, think, you know what? These qualities are in that person. I picked them for a reason. Things haven't worked out, and maybe they did some things that made me unhappy, but that's not a reason to make my children unhappy. And that's not a reason to make my children doubt their parent.
Yeah.
They or just, or dislike their parent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fine line to walk. It really is.
But we have to remember that children innately want to love and be loved by both parents. And when one parent bends over backwards to try to shade the situation so that the child doesn't love anymore, like or respect their other parent, it's harming a child from the inside out. It's damaging
yes,
emotionally and psychologically, and
it's
it
too
doesn't have
difficult,
to be that way, of course.
right? It's too children. It's too difficult for the children to handle that. We're adults. The children need to be able to go to each household, know they're loved, know that they aren't going to be questioned about what the other parent was doing and who they're hanging with, because that puts the child in just a terrible situation of basically being a tattletale and disloyal to one parent all the time.
It's a
How can
no-win.
anyone do that? Yes, it's no win. It's almost like being a prisoner of war.
Yeah. I know parents don't grasp that fully, but when you put yourself in your child's shoes, suddenly you're seeing it from the eyes of a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old, and it's a totally different reality when the weight of it is on their shoulders.
Mhm. Exactly. Exactly. And then they have siblings, and then they have to worry about the siblings and how that's, and the reactions there, and then the step siblings and this and that. And yes, these children are really, it's a very difficult
Yeah.
situation, because I'm a product of divorce. And yes, it was my mother was very good. She never said, almost never said anything negative about my dad, but my father wasn't so generous.
Mhm. Yes, and that's very common when children are exposed to one parent behaving this way, the other parent behaving that way, and they're having to find some balance in how they talk to and treat both of these parents who are behaving differently, and it can be very confusing for children.
Right. And Rosalind, the bottom line is that we're the adults, and we really do have, there are so many considerations. Children have very stressful lives these days. We don't understand it,
Right.
how much they're going through. School is a big deal. If they're getting along with others, their grades, if they're understanding things. And then they have all this turmoil around their house too, and all these different things, and not to mention their activities, and are they doing well in their extracurricular? Yes, we really need to see that children have a lot on their plates. We need to help them. We don't need to coddle them, and we don't need to do things for them. But we do need to understand that their lives are stressful, which doesn't mean that we say yes to everything. It means that we're responsible. We tell them no and mean no. And we don't let them get away with things because we're trying to be the good parent. Because usually if you're the good parent, what you really are is the bad parent, and you are setting your child up for failure.
And that may not be easy for parents to understand all the time, but it's always correct. You're so right on. I want to bring up a topic that I think is really a very challenging one, and that is handling the new relationships that your former spouse has, one or both divorced parents are going to
Mhm.
bring new people into their lives sooner or later. In some relationships, it's within months, or there may already be someone waiting in the sidelines. In other relationships, it may be a couple of years before it happens, but it usually inevitably will happen. And suddenly children are dealing with another parental kind of figure, another adult in their lives. And what advice do you have about helping parents handle those new relationships with the former spouse?
Well, first off, if there's someone new in your life, they should not be allowed to be left alone with your children until you really know them. I really know them. There are just too many stories about that. And then also they can't just walk in and the new boyfriend is now the new dad. No, that just doesn't work. And that needs to be said to the children. I'm not trying to be your mother or your father, but I am in your mom or dad's life, and I want us to get along. And in fact, there was a story from Napoleon Hill, and the author of Think and Grow Rich. I think he was 15, and his father was going to marry a new woman, and he was introducing her to his children. And he said, this is Napoleon, but don't bother with him. He's nothing but trouble. And Napoleon's dad's new wife to be looked at Napoleon and she said, I doubt that very much. He looks to me like a fine young man, and we are going to have a very good relationship, I can tell. Now that touches my heart because that changed his life, that someone actually thought something good of him and didn't just discount him and say, oh, he's not worth anything, he's no good, or agreed with his dad. That was a very big deal. So if you are the new person, look, see the good in the children. See the good in the children. Stop focusing on what they're doing wrong. Look at what they're doing right.
And too often there's a competition that gets built up within the children's minds. Children are not that sophisticated. This is a new experience for them. And they feel that this new person is taking time and love from their parents. And so the kids are very afraid. They could be nasty and try to sabotage the relationship. They could be
Yeah.
angry. But behind it all is just a fear of losing love. What can parents do to reassure their children that this isn't the case?
Oh yeah, that whole reassuring thing. When you have something in your mind and you think that something, like, oh, he loves her more than me. We get this idea when we're young that love is a pie. There's only so much love to go around.
Right.
When in reality, there's more than enough love to go around, and we love people for different reasons. So the parent really just, here's what I recommend. You make a concerted effort to say something positive to your child every single day. I love you. I'm glad you're my child. And then if the child says, yes, but I screwed this up. Well, you know what? That everybody makes mistakes. And it's not, love you whether you make mistakes or not. You're my son, my daughter, and you mean the world to me. And I love you and I'm glad you're here. And if you say that every single day, something like that every day, I like how you did this. I like how you do that. And see, part of the problem with the children feeling jealousy is the other spouse feels jealousy, and they're getting their feelings from their parents, because the parent is the new person comes into this ex-spouse's life, and the other spouse is thinking, well, why didn't it work out with us? What happened there? And then they're comparing themselves to this new person. What if my children love her more, love him more? What if he's a better parent? What if he's a better person? All these crazy thoughts that go in our mind, all these competition thoughts that don't serve us. All we can do is be the best person we can be today, and do our best today. Tomorrow will take care of itself if we do our best today. So if you do your best to show your children you love them and to be a good person, everything really should work out.
I love your messages. They're sensible, they're logical, and they do work out for the best. So thank you so much for your perspective. There's another issue that you touched on earlier that I think we should address more, and that's about how to keep the children from playing one parent against the other, because that's very typical even when there isn't a divorce in the family. It's even more common when the parents are in a separate environment, because it's so easy for kids to do that. And children are bright and will inevitably try to play the parents and tear the parents' relationship even further apart. So what can they do in that case?
You pretty much have to nip that in the bud. So either when the child says mom said this or dad said that, say, well, you know what? Let's talk with mom right now. Let's get this straightened out right now. You can do it that way, or you can say, that's not my business. You know, what you and your mom said, that's between you and your mom. That's not my business. Unless you want to make it my business. But otherwise, you know, it's not my business. So do your best to stay out of that and to stop falling into those traps, because what they'll say is they'll say something that has a grain of truth in it, but it's not the whole truth. You know, it's like taking something out of context. They'll say a couple of words that came out of the sentence, but not the rest of the words that made the meaning. So then there you are thinking, what is that what that person really said? And you're doubting yourself and doubting them. So, you know, if your doubts are that strong, you need to go to the person directly with the child there, Look, you know, look, did she misunderstand? Am I misunderstanding? Let's get this straight.
I remind my clients that the more they, as parents, can unite about parenting decisions, the easier it is for the children and the smoother everything goes. Because if a child asks one parent, which they very often will try to do, and get an answer from the parent so that they could bring it up to the other parent and say, but daddy said I can do that. It's so much smarter to say, you know, I'm going to talk to your dad about that and we'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Then even if the parents are long divorced, married to other people, it's still a parenting issue for you and your children. And the children realize they still have parents, and the parents are making these decisions. And the more united the parents are in that way, we don't always get that situation, but the more they are, the easier it is for the children to accept that the parents are making decisions, know the parents' decisions are for their well-being, and keep the relationship smooth and easy. It
And you
isn't.
make a good point, Rosalind. Just because the child asks you something doesn't mean you have to give an answer right away. You can say, let me think about it. Let me talk to your mother, your father, whoever. You know, you don't have to say, give an answer right away. And that might help too, in that it gives you time to think. And then the child can't come back at you. When you said, no, I need time to think about this. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely works better for everyone involved. I wanted to take a minute before we lose our time for you to tell people about how they can find you and your book.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Well, I do have a website, marthaburich.com. And here is the book. Yes. Yes, you can raise happy, responsible children. And this book is endorsed by Jack Canfield of Chicken Soup for the Soul.
That's
And
impressive.
Jack says it's on the back of the book. I highly endorse this book. It has the potential to transform the lives of families worldwide. So, and it's really just bullet points. What do you do with the child in the grocery store when they're running all over? What do you do in the car to keep them occupied? What do you do? You know, and it's not give them a phone or watch a movie. You know, it's always give your children chores to do, especially at the store. Let them help you. Always let them help you. Always have games and toys and things wherever you go so that the children don't get bored. But try to limit that screen time in those computers, because that is stopping your child from really being able to think and think independently.
Yeah, parents don't realize that that's the challenge that the new technology has brought. It's keeping kids from doing what we innately did when we were growing up, which is thinking and having challenges. We don't want technology thinking for us and for them. And so I love the idea of give your kids projects, give them jobs to do, whether it's in the kitchen,
Mhm.
cooking with you, whether it's in the supermarket and you're shopping. No matter what you're doing, there's always ways of giving them something meaningful to do that actually can be fun and exciting for them. And at the same time,
That's right.
it's keeping the brain spinning and getting their attention focused on things other than just whining and being bratty. So you're doing something
Exactly.
that's it's a win-win for everyone in the family.
And buy your 3-year-old a broom. A little 3-year-old, the little 3-year-old broom.
Oh,
Broom for a 3-year-old.
I love that. So before we go, I wanted to ask you about rules in the two houses. Very often the rules are not the same after a divorce in the two houses. And what advice can you share about that?
Well, the rules won't be the same because it's two different people. So there are some things that mom and dad might need to talk about and say, let's try to make these rules the same. But there are some things that are just going to be different, Make sure the children get enough sleep. Do not let them, go to bed with their phone or device because they won't get enough sleep. They'll be sneaking on there, and you don't know who's on the other side of that phone.
Yes.
You have no idea who they are playing those games with. And you have to really protect your child. Never let a child use a computer or a phone without an adult who can right there being able to see it. So don't let them do that in their bedrooms. So yes, you have to be very careful of that. And rules in the two houses, there are going to be some things different, but you also have to realize that if the child breaks a rule, well, he's living in two different places. The rules might not be exactly the same in both places. So you really have to have a conversation about that with the child too.
Yeah. Well, excellent advice. So before we go, I was wondering if you could leave us with some really strong parenting advice that we could all take to heart and utilize in the next few weeks when we're with our children, regardless of their age.
I'm going to tell you two things, Rosalind. One is get your ego out of the way. Stop seeing everything in terms of how it affects you. And as Rosalind talked to earlier, look at things through your child's eyes. Get into your child's shoes. And two, I don't know what you did yesterday. You made mistakes, but join the club. Everybody's made big mistakes. So you know what? Make restitution, do the best you can. But the best thing you can do is to live today the best way you can. Be the best human being you can today, and tomorrow will take care of itself. So that's really my advice, and that is to see things through other people's eyes. It's not always how it affects you. And also do your best today, and tomorrow will take care of itself.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Well, that certainly makes a lot of sense. And I would just add that it's okay for you to own and apologize to your children when you've made a mistake, because as a role model, it's very healthy for them to see you say, hey, Mom is sorry I said that. I shouldn't have said that. Or I changed my mind. That wasn't a smart decision to make about the situation. Please forgive me. When your kids hear you do that on occasion and own up, it makes it okay for them to apologize, to take responsibility for their own behavior, and they grow up to be a much more responsible, mature child. So they're learning it from you. You can't expect them to behave in ways that you're not behaving yourself. So this has been a wonderful conversation, Martha. I've gained a lot from it. I'm sure our listeners have as well, and I certainly appreciate you. And your book sounds like it's really a valuable resource. Again, give us the title.
Yes, you can raise happy, responsible children. It's available on Amazon, and you can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Fabulous. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for being our guest today. And thank you all.
Thank you, Rosalind.
Thank you all for watching. Again, this is Rosalind Sedacca with Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living, the podcast. And I am the founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network. So you could go to childcentereddivorce.com and find tons of resources, videos, ebooks, e-courses, and programs, as well as my own coaching services whenever you need support. Thank you all. Till next time. Bye-bye for now.